I just let the churro colt out, and I swung my gate in to let Boo in. Now this little filly is one that I raised out of my JoJo mare, Awesome Bay Joe, bred by Walker Ranch in Muscle Shell, Montana. And she's by my stud Riggs. She's the only foal on the ground by him so far. Awesome Jack's Prairie is his name. And he was bred by Gene and Jan Hedelved in North Dakota. But this little baby, I have played with her quite a bit and been around since birth. So I'm able to pet on her all over. So I literally just walked up to her and put the halter on right there. But she has never had a halter on. I made a point to kind of leave her alone until weaning. So I was really interested to see how she would be here. She's not very happy about pressure and tries whipping her head around and getting the pressure to go away. And I'm not trying to put a ridiculous amount of pressure on her. I'm just keeping some pressure on her until she offers to face me up. A lot of this is just waiting them out until you get the right response. But you have to be careful. I want to start setting them up for success and teaching them manners and such. But you also can't hold these babies to too high of a standard. You can't expect them to know what you want because they just don't know anything. I'm kind of trying to pull her around so she steps up front accidentally. Just waiting here, right there. And even if I have to pull her to get that front foot to move, I will still release. There needs to be a release somewhere so she can figure out what I'm looking for here. Now, a lot of the struggle here when you're halter breaking these guys is just because they've never been made to do anything. They have always been able to do what they want when they want, and it has never been decided for them. And some of them get a little crabby about it. That was good right there. I still had to pull on her, but it was a lot faster. And I make an effort to pet on and love on these guys constantly while I'm doing this. So I'm just working on her ability to come off my pressure and suggesting that she move her feet for the first time here. The first thing I'm really going to work on is being able to step fronts. And once she is fairly proficient about that, then we'll start working on stepping hinds. But she's still pretty crabby about having any pressure on her head there and kind of wants to throw her body around and whip her head around. And once she figures out that that isn't getting her anywhere, she'll start to settle. I just grabbed the fly spray there. She's been fly sprayed all summer, so she's pretty okay with that. Just looking for her to come off that pressure. Just a waiting game here. I put a little pressure on her butt there. Like, hey, you gotta respond, you gotta do something here. She acts surprised every time it touches her butt. But she's pretty stubborn. She's pretty determined that I'm going to just let go. There, she kind of has a little bit of a fit. And then once she steps that front, even though I made it happen, I'll release. And then I continued fly spraying there. Make sure to do the same thing on both sides. She went to walk away and wanted to get kind of pissy again, so I'm gonna wait until she can be nice before I continue trying to fly spray her. She wasn't very excited about the prospect of me calling the shots. And like I said, this is the very first time she's ever had a rope on her. I fixed my halter there. I don't want it so loose that it can get into her mouth, which it had done there once. And then we keep working on being able to come off pressure. She's still very resistant to moving. I try to give her a second to think about it. There, right when she just looked at me from the pressure, I released her. But she's pretty insistent on just setting up and bracing instead of considering moving at this point. I jump right there to kind of scare her. I don't like that she's wanting to just brace up and quit me immediately. She needs to try a little bit harder. And the other horses are messing around over there, so she got a little bit excited from that. Kind of tap her on the butt and just get her to move away. Kind of looking for her to roll her hinds a little bit there. Like right there, that was great. She actually came off my pressure instead of just throwing her body around and throwing her head. Same thing on the other side here. Looking for her to kind of give her hip a little bit or move off of my pressure somehow. Put a little bit more pressure on her butt there. Whipping my rope. She kind of flips herself around and backs up and then gives right there. Once again, even though I kind of made it happen, I'll still release and praise. Right there. That was her decision to come off my pressure that time. That was a good step. It's not perfect, it's not pretty, but it's a good starting point. Love on her a little bit right there. And I'm still just hunting for that front foot. She's starting to give to me a little bit, but she's still very resistant. Right there, when she even considered picking up her foot, I gave to her. Another give right there. This is about as basic as it gets here. Stepping the fronts and rolling the hinds. She's actually starting to consider giving to me, finally. That was really good right there. She's starting to figure out what I'm looking for. And she's wanting to meet me part way instead of immediately bracing up for the first time. A little more petting. This filly is really friendly and loves people. Out in the pasture, I started calling her Boo because every time I turned around, she was right there like I was being followed by a ghost. She would just come out of the woodwork for attention. A couple really nice steps right there. But she's a really sweet girl. Looking for her to flex here and give me her head. That halter was kind of wanting to get into her eye, so I fixed that right there. So I'm just patiently waiting until she can give to me. Eventually she'll figure it out here. She kind of wants to root still. But I'm just hunting for softness here. Everything that I'm doing here is setting her up for her future. She stepped a front really nice right there, but I was primarily looking for her to give me her head, so that's why I didn't release to it. Still just waiting. She tried right there, so I gave to her. I'm also making an effort to pet on her face and desensitize her to being touched there. While she was little, out on the pasture, she was always pretty comfortable with me petting her on the neck and the belly and down her back, on her butt. But she didn't really like me touching her face, so I make an effort to pet on her face quite a bit on this video. I'm looking for that hip now. She steps her fronts nicely. And when she steps into me there, I touch her on the butt and she rolls her hinds one step. Looking for that hip again. I'm patting her on the butt, trying to ask her to move here. Right there. Just reinforcing that she has to come off of my pressure one way or another. And I'm hunting for softness and feel and quality. She's starting to pick that up here. Looking for her to roll those hinds again. Just keeping repetitive pressure on her hip there. That was a good try. She didn't step correctly per se, but she moved off my pressure, which is all I'm looking for at this point. That was a nice give. Flexing. She's starting to get that figured out. She's pretty smart. Looking for those hips again. Repetitive pressure. Touching her with my hand. And when she moves, I give and rub on her some more. This is a really sweet little girl. That was perfect right there. Stepped her fronts, followed a feel. Now the other way. Really, really nice. She's trying for me. She's willing to come off my pressure now. Getting her figured out. Just looking for her to come off my hand and flex a little bit. Looking for that hip now. Repetitive pressure. I'm just slapping her on the side there, on her hip, with an open hand. Trying to ask her to come off my pressure. She kind of wanted to put me in a corner there, so I moved her a little bit. Step her around. That was really nice. Suggesting forward steps, and she's very willing right there. That was great. Nice shapy filly. I'm looking for her to move that hip over again right here. She kind of wants to bump into me a little bit, but I'm not going to be super worried about that here. I like where she wants to have her head. She's actually bent around towards me, but she needs to come off my pressure still, so I'm just waiting for her, and I'll stick in there as long as I need to until she offers the right response. With all the head throwing and stuff, I just try to stick in there and wait her out and keep the pressure on if I can. She's getting kind of bully right there. Thinks she can just bull through me. I kind of jerk her around right there, and then we go back to what I was initially asking for. She was just getting a little bit belligerent there. So she's pretty sure she doesn't need to come off my pressure here. But she'll find that I'm more persistent than she is stubborn. There. That was the hip. And then we go back to rubbing and petting. She definitely has a stubborn streak in there, but she's wicked smart. I really, really like how she's put together. Nice step right there. Very willing. Super, super nice filly. I'm pretty proud of her. Looking for that hip again. Kind of build up to my consistent rhythmic pressure. I don't want to just walk up and start slapping her on the side there. She comes off of my pressure a lot easier that time. It's not nearly as much of a struggle. Starting to get her figured out. This was Boo's first time wearing a halter, and I was pretty happy with how she ended this session. She's finally coming off of my pressure, stepping her fronts pretty nicely, and coming along on her hinds. I give her plenty of opportunity to come off my pressure there. But she's still just a little bit resistant. She tries backing away and then actually rolls her hinds and gets release. All this rubbing and petting is really good. For her, it's not such a big deal, but on these colts that are a little more unsure of the human, it really reinforces that the human is good, and it gives them a little bit of time to think between asks. Trying to clean up this rolling the hinds business a little bit before I turn her loose. I want her to come off my pressure with a little more gusto, a little more quality than this. I don't want to have to thump on her to get her to move every single time. Nice looking shoe right there. More petting. She's not worried about that lead rope slapping all over. Perfect step right there. Beautiful. Looking for those hinds again. She offers a front, but it's not really what I'm looking for. I want her to step those hinds. I'm lightly smacking her with the rope there. Right there. Once again, it's not correct, but it's a try. Another nice lick and chew. She's really, really soft about stepping those fronts. She's not trying to throw her head now. Perfect rolling the hinds right there. That was beautiful. The more I look at this footage, the more I realize just how shapy this filly is. She sure is a nice one. There, that was good. That was the side that she's had some trouble with. Beautiful. I pick up the lead rope and she's already thinking about it, which is a perfect place to stop. I do a little bit more rubbing on her head there for desensitizing. And when I take the halter off, I tip her nose to me and rub on her some more. And I want to scoop her nose with that halter and kind of prepare her for being haltered the next time. And that's it. I was really happy with this girl. She put in a really nice session. Thank you for watching.